We're going to talk about accelerating innovative ideas. But you're probably wondering, what does it mean to accelerate a social impact innovative idea? And we were wondering the same thing, and we found that bringing together different types of expertise is what it means to us. But how do you share those expertise and talent? So it's not always easy, and we have been kind of merge our teams, right? That's been an interesting adjustment. Merging our teams, Google.org's focused on volunteering and nonprofits, and Launchpad team, the accelerator team, we were focusing on startups. It was a very successful experiment, but we've learned a lot, and we're very excited to share with you today.
Yeah, like Sherry said, it was not always easy. As some of the grantees who joined our first week of boot camp can attest, there's a lot to learn about kind of bringing different types of expertise to bear in new contexts. I know that here we have a lot of nonprofits that are thinking about how they can work with mentors, volunteers, accelerator programs more effectively that might be available to them. We have tech experts and tech companies that are thinking about how they can be bringing their expertise to bear to drive impact for organizations whose missions they really care about. And so our next panel will focus on that. It's going to be moderated by my teammate Erin Hattersley at Google.org. She leads all of Google's volunteering programs for North and South America. And we're going to actually have a unique format for this panel. So we're going to have four people, and each pair represents one volunteer or one mentor and one member of the nonprofit. And they're going to talk about what they learned as they tried to work together and collaborate and drive impact. So welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Thanks, Molly and Sherry, for the introduction. My name is Erin Hattersley, and I lead volunteering for Google.org across the Americas region. I am super excited to be here today, especially since we just wrapped up the AI Impact Challenge Accelerator. 9 months together, learning from one another, sharing with one another. It's been an incredible journey, and we've learned a lot along the way. During those 9 months, we've had Google volunteers working on an ongoing basis to support all of our grantees who were given funding. So shout out to the grantee success managers and AI coaches in the room. Woo! I know they've learned just as much from our grantees as hopefully they shared with all of you. In addition, 2 of our grantees here today on the stage have been participating in the Google.org Fellowship, which is where we deploy Googlers full-time pro bono for 6 months to work alongside with these nonprofits. So I'm excited to hear about both of these journeys from both the Googlers' perspective as well as the nonprofits who have been participating. I firmly believe that we should bring the best of Google, our products, our funding, of course, and our Googlers so that we can drive social impact and accelerate the existing social impact that the communities and nonprofits around us are already driving. It has been an absolute pleasure personally to work on these programs in the background, and it has been an experiment. So like I said, we've learned a lot, and I want to thank the grantees who have been willing participants along the way, since I know it's been a partnership in the true sense of the word. So with that, I'd love to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, and if you wouldn't mind telling us your elevator pitch for your project, and for the Googlers, the same for your program that you've been participating in. Go ahead, John.
All right, so my name is John Callery. I am the Director of Technology at the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project is the leading provider of suicide prevention and crisis intervention services for LGBTQ youth. Now, suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people in the United States. And our research has shown that more than 1.8 million LGBTQ youth seriously consider suicide each year. So the objective of our machine learning project is also in the queuing space, where we're looking to prioritize LGBTQ youth at highest risk of suicide to connect them to a trained counselor as quickly as possible.
Hi, I'm Grace Mitchell. I'm a data analyst at WattTime, and our objective in this project is to continuously estimate both generation and emissions for every major fossil fuel power plant worldwide. There's extreme issues in lack of data availability in the climate space, and our problem hopes to address that.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Vais. I'm a product manager at Google on the cloud team, but I'm one of the Googlers that's been deployed as part of the Google.org fellowship program. So I've been working full-time with WattTime and Carbon Tracker. We have some more members of the team actually over there. So for the past 5 months, I've been working full-time with them. I'm still a Google employee, but for all intents and purposes, I've been deployed with this grantee for the past 5 months.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rubén Lozano. I'm a product manager at Google Maps focusing on driving. And in addition, I'm also a part-time volunteer with the Trevor Project. So I've been supporting the Trevor Project for the last 9 months as an AI coach. And in the context of the Social AI Impact Challenge, AI coaches serve as the main advisor to grantees about AI strategy and also how to connect with different Googlers when we may not be the experts in the topic.
Thank you. So to start us off, would love to hear what is one pivotal takeaway that you want to make sure this audience hears today about what it means for you to accelerate these innovative project ideas with support from collaborators. Grace, let's start with you.
So AI for social good, as we've heard a lot today, is a really difficult space to work in. One of the strengths that you have is that the good you're doing in one place can be applied to another. And to make sure that you have effective solutions everywhere, you have to admit that you're going to need help to do that. I would say that collaboration, partnerships, even just our collaboration through Google on this project has really brought in this surgence of excitement and people who want to volunteer. And also, I think anything that's putting more limelight onto your problem is always a pro. And I know that finding partners, and we do work in partnership with a couple of organizations on the project, does seem like a daunting task. But once you accept that you need help, the benefits really come through from there on.
Natalie, would love to hear from your perspective supporting WattTime as a fellow.
Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest takeaways from this project for us has been the importance of working across disciplines, not just collaborating across organizations. And there was something that stood out on a panel earlier where someone was describing, a doctor working alongside a computer scientist. This is so true, especially for our project, which is in the climate space. Some of us actually had the opportunity to attend COP25, which is the UN Climate Conference in December. And the biggest thing that stood out was that, frankly, tech was pretty absent from that stage. And that might be surprising because we're sitting in a room here full of people with a lot of tech context and tech backgrounds. But when we were there at this conference, it kind of highlighted the fact that people are trying to solve the same issues in their own spheres, but they're not interacting that much. And so the importance of getting these spheres coming together to working on the same problem but cross-discipline is so important. So that really stood out. I think tech has an opportunity to pull themselves up to the table a little bit more, especially when it comes to working with policymakers. So that was a big takeaway for us.
Awesome. John, why don't you share from the Trevor Project's perspective?
All right, so I think money is really important. But money really isn't everything in a project like this. I think we realized that expertise was also a critical driver in our success. I think when we started in the Impact Challenge, we had this idea that we just needed data scientists and machine learning engineers to accomplish our objectives. But as part of the accelerator and the fellowship, Google provided us with UX research, UX design, and product expertise. And these individuals really helped us understand that machine learning was just a component in a much broader ecosystem of levers that could help us improve service levels for LGBTQ youth. And I had another idea.
If you want, Rubén can go and we can come back to
Sure,
it.
yeah, go for it.
Go ahead, Rubén.
Cool. I think that I have actually 2 takeaways. The first one is that AI is not a magic wand. And as Jacqueline said earlier on, AI is not always the right solution to solve a problem. Sometimes it's overly complex. But when AI is the right solution to solve a problem, it can cross boundaries, and it can also affect really how, really your product and your data. Specifically for Trevor, for example, where we're trying to accelerate the contact between, when youth contact Trevor to the moment that they are with counselors, when you start looking at the actual user flow, we realize that one key part of the data that we were getting from the youth was when they were talking with the counselors. But if we wanted to accelerate that contact, that meant that we had to ask them first. So that meant that we had to change part of the user experience or pipelines. We had to, at some point, realize that a lot of the data that we had, we couldn't reuse because the questions that we were asking youth were in a completely different context. So it was a lot of extra work that maybe we were not prepared to do at first. And the second one that I do want to share is that I think that it's important to go fast, but if you really want to go fast, sometimes you need to go slow first. And this was really relevant for Trevor specifically, that we are dealing with a community that has been historically vulnerable and discriminated against. So something that was critical for us was that we didn't want to deploy any model that was not completely fair, that was equally successful. If a Black transgender girl was contacting us, if it was a gay Hispanic man, or if it was a white non-binary person who was still dealing with their sexual orientation, we wanted to make sure that we could serve all of them equally. And that impacts everything. Impacts how you collect data, how do you label data, how you create your models, and it impacts also the user experience. Every word matters. These are communities that are very special, and they even have their own vocabulary. So for us, we were so blessed to have the expertise from Trevor to understand all those biases, but still we had blind spots, and we had to go out in the field and do research with intersectionality among people that are LGBT, but also from different races, to really understand those nuances.
Thank you for bringing that up, Rubén. John, did you?
I remember.
Great, go ahead.
So we were talking about experts, and I think another thing in that line of thought is you also have to look at internal expertise. When we started this project, I think we really saw it very much as a tech solution, but we have, over the past couple of years, built out really a world-class research and clinical team. So we actually have 3 PhDs in clinical psychology and 1 MD, a psychiatrist. And within the past few months, we've really involved them in conversations about model development, about fairness, and it's dramatically improved the quality of the work, and also is expanding the scale of what we're actually able to accomplish.
Thank you. It's fun to hear some of these pivotal takeaways. Literally remind me back to the keynote this morning from the Insights report about collaboration, about making sure you're building AI responsibly, and all of these different key themes that I think we've heard and seen through the application pool, as well as during these opportunities for Googlers to engage with these organizations. So John and Grace, a question for both of you. What has surprised you the most during the last 9 months in your working alongside Googlers?
So I have 2, one from the Launchpad Accelerator program and then one from the fellowship program. And the Launchpad Accelerator was originally structured for for-profit organizations, and I believe this was the first adaptation to social impact sector. So we walked in on the first day, and mentor sessions are a huge part of that program. And I think that the first couple of mentor sessions kind of were aligned with what you would assume of a big tech company like Google. Things like overconfidence, people sort of rushing to understand your problem and maybe not quite getting there, and also focusing on product, on growth, on users. And it's not that we didn't want the product, it's not that we didn't want the impact of our users, but we're not optimizing for dollars and cents, we're optimizing for did we help a person. And the most remarkable thing was our executive director, Gavin, in the audience actually went to the feedback session that evening and expressed his frustrations. And by the next morning, there was already a shift. You could tell that the mentor sessions communication turned into a framework of what's your problem and how can I help versus I know what to do and I'm going to tell you how to do it. So I'm always surprised with the speed and effectiveness at which Google operates. And then for the fellowship program, I also went into that expecting sort of the same things you would probably assume about a company like Google. And we had the kickoff event, and I just remember sitting with all of the fellows for the first time, and we had a discussion about team values and what did people want to see in their work, what did people want and expect in working with each other. And I was super surprised that people were super mushy. They were really they came to us because they wanted to work on something that they cared about, but they wanted to be taken care of. You know, they wanted to communicate and see each other and see us as people outside of the workplace who have interests and hobbies. And it was really surprising to me how similar our cultures and team values were.
Go ahead, John.
For me, I think we were really surprised at how truly kind of dedicated the Google teams were to our success. I think that you really have to go into this with kind of a vulnerable mindset. You know, you're awarded a grant and you need to be vulnerable in saying, I actually don't know how to do that. And I actually need help with that. Like, you're worried that they're gonna take the money and be like,
Never mind.
But any time that we've reached out to the Google team, they have the entire Google, 130,000 people in their network that they've been able to really tap into with questions ranging from ML to CI/CD and engineering. And also, when we were bringing on our data science team, this was a new foray for the Trevor Project. So they actually helped us critique our job descriptions for our data scientist and our machine learning engineer. And they actually participated in interviews, which was incredibly helpful. So yeah.
And those new team members have been onboarded and are officially a part of the Treasure Project now, right?
They are. And I think something else that's been great is the culture has also really rubbed off on the Trevor Project in a couple of different areas. So I think Google has really excelled over the years with goal setting and using OKRs and kind of has an internal culture of transparency when it comes to like sharing and collaboration. And just a couple of months ago, for the first time in the Trevor Project's 20-year history, we rolled out OKRs at the entire organization. And so it's been really positive in a lot of different areas, not just technology.
Thank you. It's fun to hear about the fact that it's not just about technical expertise or bringing two teams together, that you really have to pay attention to team dynamics and investing in that first and foremost to build a strong foundation. And once you have that foundation, you really establish the trust to be able to be vulnerable and ask for help and have hard conversations when things aren't going according to plan, which I know came up along the way. So it's really fun to hear your reflections and reminisce. So Natalie, I would love to hear from you. What advice do you have for a tech employee who may have the opportunity to participate in something like a fellowship or even in a volunteer capacity with a nonprofit?
First of all, I would say do it, 100%. I found out about this program like a day before the applications were due. Thank goodness. I saw the email come through. And it's so incredible that Google offers this. I actually was working on a 20% project. For anyone at Google that knows, that's more of a 120% project. So I was sitting over in cloud, product managing a database, trying to do social impact on the side. And then I hear about this program that allows employees to go full-time work with one of our grantees. Like, that's incredibly amazing that Google allows employees to do that. I would say I think more companies should offer things like that. But if you do have the opportunity to do it, absolutely do it. It's been an incredible experience. One of the biggest learnings I would have, though, is that you pretty much have to shed everything that you know about what your role was at Google. They actually say we're looking to hire, a PM, a program manager, and a couple software engineers, and we're going to put these fellows together with one of the grantees. Couple challenges with that. Number one, what a PM does on an enterprise database product is not what you're going to do at a fellowship, at a nonprofit working to measure emissions from power plants. So I quickly learned about like physical infrastructure of the electricity grid, not something I'd learned about before. And I remember even in the first interview with Gavin, he was like, so what does a PM do? And I was like, I started explaining it, and then I realized it doesn't apply at all. And I was like, how about we just forget about my role, and you tell me where you need help, and then we'll work as a task force. So I think like big company employees coming to work at a small company, like we have a role for everything at Google, right? We have like 4 different roles that work on projects together. You have to shed that completely if you're going to work essentially in a startup environment where the goal is impact and it's not user retention and growth and revenue. It's very different. So that was a fun learning experience.
Natalie also has a background in the startup sector. So that was a helpful piece of intel when we were interviewing the fellows to know that she had that flexibility kind of built in to your DNA. So, John, I would love to hear from your perspective. What would you encourage tech volunteers to do when they are participating in opportunities like this?
So again, I would say if you're given the opportunity, I highly encourage participating in something like this. It's been a wonderful learning experience for us. But learn as much as you can about the organization that you're going to go and be a part of. When the fellows joined the Trevor Project, almost all of them went through our 40-hour crisis services training. And we heard from them that they learned new kind of aspects about empathy and safe and inclusive messaging. And these were tools that they were able to take away from the Trevor Project and use at home and in their daily life and in the workplace at Google when they were interacting with their teams at Google. And we actually had our midpoint check-in for the fellowship this past week in Los Angeles. And 100% of the Google employees who participate said that they've learned a new skill through this fellowship that will be directly applicable to what they do when they go back to Google. So I think that you're giving your time, but you're also learning new skills, learning new information that will be applicable when you get back to the workplace.
That's awesome. I'm so hopeful that all of the Googlers, 11 who have been working with the Trevor Project, when they come back to Google, will be building more inclusive products just as a result of spending time with your organization and learning about the work that you do. So thank you for investing in them as well. Okay, so let's talk about challenges. I know we've encountered some challenges along the way, and I would love to hear from Grace and Rubén some of what those challenges may have been and what the learnings are for those of you who are considering implementing accelerator programs or offering pro bono opportunities for your employees to work with nonprofits. So let's go ahead and start with Grace.
Yeah, so the first time I heard of the fellowship program, we were approaching the second high touch point of the Launchpad Accelerator. And there was a meeting with Erin and Jen that I think we all remember. And basically, at that point in the project, I think there was maybe 4 of us working on it. And we were in very early stages, had not yet built many of the aspects of the product that we needed to build. And we were asked, would you like 7 people to come join your team full-time for 6 months, and you have 2 months to get ready for them? So yeah, I felt scared. I was like, man, I was scared. And going back to John's earlier comment about vulnerability, that was definitely something that I felt at that time, because I think in common, when somebody like Google comes and extends and says, hey, here's additional help, you feel afraid in that moment. You feel like, are these people going to come, and are we not good enough? Are these software engineers much more experienced than myself going to look at my code and be like, wow, this is really bad, you guys have to start over or something, and it's like these crazy thoughts go through your mind. But obviously looking at that big opportunity and that additional investment, we knew it was something that we had to do. So even though the beginning emotion was fear, the ending emotion now that we're approaching the end is really just bittersweet. You're really gonna miss these people. I know there will be a lot of feelings and sort of gaps in the team once you guys leave, and hopefully we can hire up on that skill set and whatever else, and that will be a challenge within itself, taking on people and then having them leave and taking on new people, but wouldn't trade it for anything.
Grace, how did you all overcome that challenge? Because I also remember that meeting very well. And I remember walking out and thinking, oh my gosh, she must have had a bad experience sometime, or, I'm so curious to know more. And I was trying to better understand where that kind of reservation was coming from. But you all have overcome that very gracefully. Haha, your name is Grace. So I'm curious, how did you do that? How did you prepare in those 2 weeks, or how did you kind of let go of those fears?
So since my name is Grace, I'm inherently graceful. But no, I think it was really just a personal problem. I think that, I'm not that experienced. I've been working with WattTime for 2 years, and as somebody who's only worked with other nonprofits or in small companies, or the work that I was doing beforehand, I was mostly doing it alone. There's just this fear of adding on new people and having them review your work, and I didn't have that confidence in my abilities. And after realizing and just thinking it through, that it was a decision we made as a team. Whatever my reservations were, that was absolutely not going to hold us back in moving forward with this opportunity. But I think personally, you just have to say, maybe it goes that way, maybe it goes the other way, and at the end, you are going to learn something from it. So fortunately, my work was not garbage, or at least they didn't say that. It turned out, and I think that in uncertain situations, it's really hard to stay positive. You're always going to assume the worst, and I think other members of our team felt that as well. And it's really just time. You just say yes to the opportunity, and then you roll with the punches, and treat people like human beings, and I think everybody comes out of it better in the end.
Great. Rubén, you've been working with the Trevor Project from the beginning of the 9-month accelerator program as an AI coach. So tell us some of what the challenges have been in either being an AI coach, or in adapting and spending your 20% time, which is 8 hours a week or more, perhaps, to support the organization.
Sure. Yeah. There were a lot of challenges.
Shh, don't say that.
Just to start with, right? If your problem requires AI, it is pretty likely that you have a complex problem, right? And that will mean that involving just the tech team is not going to be enough. When we started the accelerator, we came all together. We thought that we knew the scope of the problem, where were the boundaries as well of the solution. But when we started to actually brainstorm how to really solve the problem, it was clear that we were getting out of those boundaries. We were like, why don't we change the website? Why don't we change the process of how you take the call? Why don't we even change your phone number? And obviously, the reaction from Trevor was like, no. We came here because we had this problem and we were going to solve it with machine learning. So the challenge there is that you need to have really tough conversations early on, and you still don't know the people that you're working with. So how does that happen? And it was hard. As Grace was saying at the beginning, it was tough. But the format of the accelerator, where you're actually face-to-face, where you're with your grantee for almost a week, and you start realizing that, sure, you may have very different opinions about how to solve the problem, but you're aligned on the ultimate goal. And in those cases, then the conversation started to be a little bit easier, and we had to come to the agreement that we needed an organizational buy-in to be able to solve this. And Trevor was great to say, you know what, it's true. And they had to go back and say, hey, this is not going to be as small as we thought. So I think that was challenging at the beginning. And something else that I think that Grace also mentioned, but I just want to mention it again. Working with mentors was pretty hard. We have great mentors, but it was hard again because the mentors that we're working with are experts helping startups to become sustainable, to grow. But nonprofits are not startups, and specifically for Trevor, they've been in business for 20 years. If there's an expert in the topic, if there's an expert on who knows the market, it's Trevor. And we didn't want more users. That was the problem, that we couldn't handle all of the users. So breaking that mental model, it requires time. And it requires time from the mentors to obviously understand where we are. But it also requires a lot of time from us. And we also needed to change our approach to how to work with mentors. At the beginning, we were just going to meetings and say, hey, what's up? And that doesn't work, right? We have to be respectful of their time or their expertise. So we started to, okay, what are they experts for? What is the agenda? What do we want to get out of every single meeting? So it was a two-way learning process that we had. And across the whole program, because it was 9 months, we also learned that it was more impactful, at least for us, to have continuity with mentors instead of just having multiple mentors coming all the way.
Thank you. So because we got the challenges out of the way, we'd love to hear from our grantees, especially what is the proudest shared accomplishment that you recall over these last 9 months with your team and the Googlers supporting your work? Grace, start with you.
Sure. So our project is something that has never been done before. The exact combination of data sets and tools and applications that we're focusing on has never, we've never seen it, or we're hoping that if somebody has done it, please let us know. So we were starting completely from scratch, did not have a built-up code base, did not have a data pipeline. And getting that data pipeline for us was the high priority item. We had an ML engineer coming on, and she needed the labeled data set to work with, and just getting to that point really took a village. So getting there and getting the model training and seeing that, this is something that is going to work, that was a question we had from the beginning. So having that moment of this works, that was the best feeling ever. We could all be pretty relieved moving on.
I remember in a team meeting that we had with the fellows, because we like to make sure we're checking in with both our grantees separately to hear feedback and be able to improve along the way, but also with the fellows. And I remember in one of the early meetings, asked one of the engineers, so did it work? And he's like, yes, it worked. We're like, phew, that's such great news. So we shared the joy in that accomplishment. John?
So, the Trevor Project was 19 years old when we started this. And when you take an organization that's been around and you really make it a data-driven and data-enabled organization, people are like, hell no. A lot, I think somebody talked about this earlier. People have a lot of fears when you talk about machine learning that you're going to automate them out of a job. Mm-hmm. You're going to replace a counselor with a bot talking with youth. And so we really had to kind of dispel those fears and really introduce people to machine learning. So we actually worked with Google to set up kind of a 2-part speaker series. It was an introduction to machine learning, and we offered it to our entire staff. And we had about 60% attendance at each of them. And we talked about what machine learning was. We talked about how it's used in everybody's kind of daily life, and made it a lot more tangible than I think it was before we started this program. And that has created a major culture shift in our organization where people are now kind of thinking about applications for AI, but also applications not for AI, and really thinking about how we can leverage data to improve our services. So I think that was a really big win for our organization and culture.
That's awesome. Congratulations. So I want to end with asking each of you to share what is one action that you would like to ask this audience, which is a very diverse set of stakeholders who have interests in many different aspects of what we've been talking about. What would you ask them to take, an action to take right now to help continue accelerating these innovative projects of yours? So, Rubén, let's start with you.
I think that for anyone who is building an AI model or is planning to build an AI model, I cannot emphasize how important it is to consider fairness and biases in day one. If you have not done it, just stop and start doing it now, because that's creating these fairness metrics is very important. let's not forget that at the end, technology is just a magnifier of human intent, and we, not the machines, are the ones who are going to define where these powerful technologies are taking us. So be accountable.
Thank you. Natalie?
Yeah, I would just say that there are so many different ways to get involved. I'm fortunate that I'm able to do it full time for a period of time, but people mentioned money is important, like donating money, donating time, like donating expertise, all of these things you can do. It doesn't require like a massive, change tomorrow where you're gonna leave your job and go start, working somewhere else. Like there's many ways that you can get involved and get engaged. I would say do that and then like reach across the aisle to other disciplines, because I think that's where I've seen like the ability to amplify impact is when you're stepping outside your bubble or your sphere, which in my case is tech. So that was a big learning for me.
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of people who want to work in social good, whether it's a layperson, technical, non-technical. And the reason why we're all in this room, the reason why all of our nonprofit organizations in this cohort exist is because somebody looked at the world and saw a problem and they said, I am so sick of seeing this problem. I have to do something. And they created an opportunity for themselves to help. And I would say that the perception is that that comes at great personal cost, and at times it does. You can ask any founder of these amazing organizations that it does, but it doesn't have to. And I would say, ask yourself, what opportunities can I create for myself or maybe even other people around me to solve a problem that I'm tired of seeing in the world?
John?
My first two checkboxes are please donate and we're hiring. But I think especially if you're from a tech company here, there's something that makes you really great, which is why you're in this room. And if you don't already offer skill-based volunteering, I highly encourage you take that back to your organization and see what you can do in that area. I will say that this has, Google.org has tried this for the first time. There's really a science behind it to do it well and to deliver real value. So I highly encourage you speak to the Google.org team to learn more about how to implement this in a best-in-class way. But if you haven't already, I highly encourage you take this back with you.
Wow, thanks, John. So I think we have maybe time for one question. What do you think? No? Okay. False alarm. But the good news all is we have many AI coaches, grantee success managers, mentors, fellows, and all of our grantees here. So please find us during happy hour. My hope is that this panel inspired those of you who are working in a corporation to go back and ask that you have an opportunity to volunteer, whether it be in a 20% or an X% capacity or full-time. And if you're a funder, perhaps you want to tack on an accelerator support model to your existing funding strategy, and many other opportunities, I think, for grantees to understand from you all. So thank you for sharing how best to leverage all the collaboration that is coming your way, especially because of the innovative projects that you're advancing and the interest that I think we all have in seeing your work come to fruition. So thank you to the panelists for sharing.